What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the broader markets. I'm going to break down some important news that's coming out involving President Trump, what's happening to Tesla so far, so we have some more updates on why there's going to likely be some upside if this trend continues. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link that's down below or use this QR code right here to sign up. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below and deposit $100, you're going to get $20 of free NVIDIA stock. If you deposit $2,000 or more, you're going to get $50 worth of NVIDIA plus a $100 cash reward. Deposits $10,000 or more to get $300 worth of NVIDIA plus $100, or deposits $50,000 or more to get $1,000 of free NVIDIA stock plus $100. You're also going to qualify for an 8.1% APY on uninvested cash and all friends very soon, so please use my link down below to sign up. Anyways, let's talk about what's happening to Tesla. So for the shorter term for Tesla, we have an inverse head and shoulders like pattern that's been developing, and this could help Tesla push temporarily back up towards the 450s in my opinion. I think we're looking a bit more bullish for now approaching this earnings, as there's lots of hype that Tesla will do very well. Keep in mind, Tesla broke their deliveries record. They did very, very well during the previous quarter. And there's going to be a lot of hype about that, especially with their big projected growth. Now, overall, there could be a big increase in the share price approaching earnings. That is what Tesla typically does. But then we're going to see if we get some kind of rejection or not once we approach the 450s. So keep that in mind. Now, one thing that's also worth mentioning is that for the last couple of months, right, or not months, weeks actually, Tesla has been making lower highs over and over and over again. So the question is, will we continue this trend and see kind of like a pump and dump like move, or do we continue to break the trend and turn a lot more bullish? I'll give you guys some answers about this in the next couple of minutes. I first want to mention that Tesla's third quarter earnings is going to be coming out this coming Wednesday. So that's very, very important. Analysts are increasing their profit forecasts for the upcoming reports, and we're going to be looking for a nice increase overall. We're also going to be looking for a nice increase in their overall revenue, but overall, the EPS for the third quarter is still falling by about 24% to about 55 cents versus 72 cents in Q3 of 2024. But overall, despite that, we're still looking for a nice, profit that could be looked at. We're going to see how the margins end up looking overall, and we're also going to be looking to see what happens with their overall revenue. We're expecting an increase by 4.6%. On top of this, there's a lot of hype right now because they had deliveries at about 497,000 in total. That is once again beating the all-time high record, and that's some great news, at least so far. So we're going to see what happens with that, especially with energy storage surpassing what we saw even during last year. So I think that sector is getting stronger, but we'll see what happens with their overall sales and how that ends up helping their numbers. Now, for other factors out there, I just want to add on that President Trump had been talking about President Xi Jinping of China. He said that he's demonstrated his strength in his leadership and he thinks that we're going to be fine with China. He also says that we're going to likely have a fair deal. It's going to be very fair. That's what President Trump said in his latest speech. He also mentioned that the 100% tariffs that he's imposed or planning on imposing in November, they're not going to be sustainable. But that is what the number is. He also said that China forced him to do that. So he's saying that it's because of China that he had to do that. But then he repeated that things are going to be fine with China and we're going to meet in 2 weeks. So he's referring to Xi Jinping. President Trump will be meeting up with the president of China in just a couple of weeks, and that's some important news. Now, there's also going to be large truck tariffs coming out at a rate of 25% starting on November 1st. That's another very, very important thing to remember for those involved in the industries. But the most important thing right now is that the tension between the US and China has cooled off a bit. Although we had China retaliating and threatening to retaliate even more, right? We had the port fees going up and other factors. President Trump is now saying that things are going to be fine. The tariffs are not going to be sustainable, meaning that they're not going to be a long-term thing. They're just being imposed for a negotiation tactic. And President Trump also said that there's going to likely be a new deal with China after the big change that came out when it came to export controls on rare earth materials. This is a very, very big update because overall, President Trump's tonality has once again helped the markets cool, and the tensions are cooling a bit. So that is a bit more bullish for stocks. That's part of why we're running right now. I still think the market could go a bit higher if this persists. So keep that in mind. That could be more good news for Tesla. On Monday, We just have a couple of bill auctions coming out for tomorrow, nothing way too serious. On Tuesday, we have Waller from the Fed giving a speech, nothing else that's too crazy. But on Wednesday, despite the fact that there's no major data, we do have Tesla's earnings. I'll show you guys the calendar in just a second. And for Thursday, we don't have initial jobless claims coming out because of the government shutdown, so data is still delayed once again. But we do have data from the Kansas Fed coming out involving our manufacturing numbers. There is some data on Thursday. And then Friday is very important since we have CPI data, so keep that in mind for the economic calendar. There's not really much coming out for tomorrow, but things get serious by Friday. However, despite this, I just want to add on that for Tesla's earnings, keep this in mind. Mondays, tomorrow, is going to be a very quiet day. But for Tuesday, we have Coca Cola announcing their earnings alongside Netflix. Netflix is going to be a big one for Tuesday. And on Wednesday, we have AT&T in the morning and other communications stocks. And we have big tech. We have Tesla starting off its earnings, kicking off the big tech earnings cycle on Wednesday after market close. Their overall EPS is not expected to be the strongest, but their growth in the energy sector should be strong and their revenue should be quite good according to what we're seeing. So some things should be really, really good, and other things are kind of like mixed from what analysts are expecting. But Tesla is known for beating expectations most of the time. We'll see how the margins look, but overall, this is still looking optimistic for investors, and we'll see how they end up doing. However, the only thing is, how is Tesla's guidance going to look? That is one big question to remember. What will happen to Tesla's earnings, what will happen to their guidance, and we have to be very open minded for that. After that, we have American Airlines on Thursday before market open, and then after market close, we have Intel and a few more, and that's pretty much it for the week. But the biggest day is going to be Wednesdays. We have AT&T, Tesla, and IBM all announcing their earnings, Tesla being the biggest one of the week. So that being said, what do I think is going to happen to the share price? Well, approaching Tesla's earnings, we are known for doing quite well typically. And we got this big bounce on Friday after we got good ratings from analysts and a lot of good piece of news. Different analysts are expecting Tesla to run to $500 a share by the end of the year. Others are very, very bullish. So far, that's really helping us. And the expectation of good earnings is looking quite good as well. So it is worth mentioning that Tesla was essentially doing this now instead of just continuing to collapse and make new lows. We're trying to make a higher low compared to this low. So this is a bullish move. If Tesla loses 432, however, there is going to be a risk of 426 or below if that fails us. That's going to be more bearish if that rejects. If we're bullish, right, the bullish case is that this is a low here. We came up, made a higher low, came back up. And as we're making higher lows, we could continue to uptrend for essentially the 450s. And we'll see if we continue to break past them or if we reject or not. But overall, the upside potential is still there. So in my opinion, with the inverse head and shoulders like structure, I think the odds are favoring an attempt for Tesla to push for 450, at least for the start of the week. I think we're going to try to go a little bit higher approaching this earnings report. And then we're going to see if we reject or not off that to continue. But I do see us going to at least 450 to 455. Now, this could be a trap, though, so don't be overly bullish. We still have a larger head and shoulders. And even if Tesla pumps a bit approaching its earnings, that does not mean we're just going to go to new all-time highs. Although it's possible we have to take out this high first, it's also possible we kind of like pump a bit, then we turn back down. Sometimes earnings are like buy the rumor, sell the news, and we could still turn back down on Tesla to fill this gap at 395. So there is still a gap all the way down here. So I would not rule out the possibility of that getting filled. I would not turn too bullish or too bearish. I'd be very unbiased, but just know that that gap is still unfilled. So be very careful when it comes to that. So for now, we are looking more bullish. I could see the 450s coming, but that does not necessarily mean that we're going to go back to all-time highs. From here, we could still turn down again later on due to seasonality and other factors. We'll have to see how it goes. Will this be a buy the rumor, sell the news kind of event, or does Tesla just keep running? We'll see about that. So take it one step at a time, right? Plan B comes before C. We're not just going to jump to plan C, D, E, F. We're just going to take it one step at a time, starting off with plan A and plan B. For now, we're going to start off with the temporary pump. So we're going to play the chart for now. And then we'll see if Tesla rejects again to return much lower. But I do anticipate some upside for now. So please keep that in mind, especially if 440 breaks. So by the way, for Tesla's levels, if we break and hold above 440, our next target is going to be closer to 450. I would not be surprised if we try to push for 444, then eventually 450 as our next potential targets. And if those break, this high right here around 455 could be tested. If we lose 432 and 426, we could be dumping, but for now, there is upside potential for a temporary pump. For SPY, One thing you'll see about SPY is that we have a left shoulder, a head, and a right shoulder like pattern that's kind of like forming, but we're temporarily trying to bounce. So despite the head and shoulders, we might be going a little bit higher. We got a monstrous bounce on Friday after we got good news from President Trump talking about how he wants to once again meet up with Xi Jinping in about 2 weeks. And simultaneously, he said that his tariffs of 100% on China are not going to be sustainable. It's just a short-term tactic for negotiations. That means that instead of just dumping straight down and losing 653 to be bearish, we have to lose 653 to be really, really bearish. We're going to likely not do that. We might see SPY kind of dip and then start bouncing and slowly go for 668 to 670. But then once we hit 670, I'd be very careful since we got 1, 2, 3 rejections here, and we could be getting another rejection off that. And the reason why I think SPY might go a little higher is not just because of the bullish news that's come out, but also because of this setup. I mentioned this on Friday. We have an inverse head and shoulders here. And this typically would take us a little bit higher for like 668 to 670 before we see a potential rejection. So where are we basically going? I think we temporarily go a little bit higher for 668 to 670, but then we could reject off that if we don't break past resistance. If you're bullish, you want to see us break 670 and hold it to push for all-time highs. If you're bearish, you want to see us reject and lose 658 to retest this low, and then lose 653 to start dumping a lot lower. As of right now, I'm in the middle. I do think we go a little bit higher, though. I think we could be going for 668 to 670. And then we're going to see if we end up rejecting off that or not. So just keep that in mind. Even if we do push to 668 to 670, we could still turn right back down. So don't be overly bullish yet. Let's be unbiased and play the charts. On the QQQ, it's the same thing. We're looking bullish for now. If we lose 600, we could be dipping back down towards the lows here. But right now we have 606 to 608 as our resistance, and we'll see if we reject again. So be very, very patient. We still have kind of like a head and shoulders like pattern, and a rejection is still possible. However, for now, we're going to take it one step at a time, and I think we go a little bit higher. I think we're trying to go for essentially these highs right here. 606 to 608 is likely coming. We'll see if we get some kind of rejection or not. So please keep that in mind. For the IWM, here's the hint right here. We still have this big gap to fill back down around 238. Now, we're not just going to dump straight down. We might bounce a little bit. I would not be surprised if we retest like 245 to 247. But then if we make a lower high compared to this low, we could still turn back down and continue to fall. So watch and see if we get some kind of bounce from here. On ES, we have a double bottom here. Notice that we have a left shoulder, a head, and a right shoulder that's still present on ES, but I don't think we're ready to reject just yet. We still look bullish on our PPO. So I would not be surprised if this goes a little bit higher. Now, if we lose 66.71, we could be dipping a lot lower. But as of right now, we're holding support. So we could be going for 67.40 to 67.50. Then we'll have to see if we get some kind of rejection after that. But we're going to likely go a little bit higher. As long as we're above 6,700, we might be going a bit higher. And then we'll see if we get a rejection for this head and shoulders. We have still not invalidated this quite yet. If we hold above 67.50, then yes, there is potential for all-time highs again. But be careful in case we get some kind of rejection. I would be very, very mindful of that. On NQ, left shoulder, head and right shoulder, we could go a little bit higher for the low 25,000s. If we break 25,200, we could be going for all-time highs. But if we come short, we could still reject. If we lose 24,868, we could still reject like this, forming the left shoulder, head and right shoulder for a big move right back down. Now on Bitcoin, we're temporarily bullish. Now keep in mind, we have this white trend line acting as a resistance. So it might bounce for the trend line, looking for 110,500, if not 100 and 112,000. And then we'll see if we get a rejection off that or not. So watch that very closely. On Tesla, like I said before, there's a temporary inverse head and shoulders, which could take us to at least the 450s. And if we break past that, then I'm looking for 454, then eventually 460. I think tomorrow we consolidate and start pushing for 450 very, very soon. And as long as Tesla does not lose 432, we're going to likely continue to go higher. And there is a good chance of that potentially happening. On Nvda, if we break 184, we're bullish, looking for 186. If we lose 178, we're going to be more bearish. I do see the potential for us to push for 186, and we'll see how it goes from there. But there is some upside potential, at least for now. On Aapl, we're making higher lows here. If we lose 249, we could be dipping lower, but as long as we're above that, we're going to be favoring more upside. I think that for now, Aapl might be dipping to retest 250, and then it could try to bounce, go a little bit higher for 255. This looks like a higher low that's being made, so it might go a little higher. Then we're going to see if it rejects near 255 to turn back down or not, so watch that very, very closely. On Netflix, we're looking a bit more bullish. As you could tell, we have kind of like an inverse head and shoulders like pattern, but it depends. At the same time, we are making lower highs. I could see an attempt for 1206, if not 1220, if that breaks, but then we're going to see if it rejects again off that or not. On MSTR, we're temporarily bullish. I see a test of 298, so it's going to likely go a bit higher for now. So keep that in mind. There is some upside potential. Celsius is bouncing off our EMAs, favoring an attempt for 66 by tomorrow. I see some upside potential. On Supermicro, we're forming a double bottom here. I'm looking for a test of 53.1 to 53.68 tomorrow. We'll see if that breaks, but there is upside potential for a bounce based off technicals. On PayPal, we need to hold above 179.2. If we do, we're looking for 182 next. On Rivian, if we break 13.1, we're looking for an attempt for 13.4. So I see a double bottom and a potential bounce that's likely coming. SoFi has 27.14, so our resistance is going to likely be tested. AMD is making higher lows here. As long as we don't lose 228, we're going to be favoring a pushback up to 238 as well. ARM has 168 as our resistance, and then 171. Those are going to be some nice resistances. For now, I do see a small bounce on this. PayPal is favoring a test of 68.24 and 69.37 as soon as tomorrow, and we'll see if we reject off 69.37. Look for a temporary bounce. Coinbase is favoring 342 and then 349 as our targets. I do see some upside potential. There's also a gap to pull back up to 357, so look for a temporary bounce. Amazon has a slight divergence. I could see a test of like 216, but it's making lower highs here, so it might touch that and reject. If we break 216, we're looking for 219, but I think it could reject. Still might be a very temporary bounce. Meta could retest 720, and we'll see if we reject from there. Google's looking more bullish. We are forming an accumulation. This will likely be retesting 256 again, and we'll see if it breaks. Microsoft has 515 as our resistance. If that breaks, we're looking for 518. And then Oracle has resistance at 297. We'll have to see how it goes from there. Also, the VIX got a rejection here. There's a gap to fill, so it's favoring 19.43. The dollars, it's been pushing, but we're going to see if it rejects off 98.65. Crude is also trying to push here, so be careful. But the main thing is the VIX has a gap to fill, so I do think the low 19s are coming, which is the reason why, or it's happening because of the market pushing more. So the market looks like it's going to go a little higher. I could see another 3 to 5 points higher on spine. We'll see if we reject after that. Same thing with the QQQ. We could easily push another couple of points. So for now, the market looks bullish. So play the trend in front of you. As the market's looking bullish, this will also greatly benefit Tesla, looking for the 450s very soon. And this is going to likely be a temporary move. We may temporarily squeeze approaching Tesla's earnings. Sometimes the squeezes could get violent, so be careful. And then at the same time, once earnings come out on Wednesday, we don't know what's going to happen to Tesla on Wednesday. Will it just continue to run? Does it get a big rug pull? That's why you want to be very careful. I'm not saying that this run is going to be a forever thing. It could just be very, very temporary. So be careful, right? There's still a much larger head and shoulders that's present. Even if we get a temporary pop, it could still lead to rejection. So be careful. So for now, like I said before, we're going to take step one before step 2 and 3. And step 1 is Tesla's going to likely be pushing for now. So just follow the trend for now. There's likely some upside potential approaching this earnings. There's typically lots of excitement approaching earnings. So this is no surprise. But then after earnings, we'll see what happens. All right. So we'll take it one step at a time, look for some upside, watch the resistances I called out. And I'll see you guys tomorrow before market open to talk about how Tesla and the market are looking. Thank you for listening, guys. I hope you guys have a good rest of your guys' days. Also know that sometimes we can't always predict the news involving banks or President Trump and such. So, we can't always predict everything perfectly, but for now, we're just following the trend, the charts, and the current news that's coming out at the time I'm recording this, which suggests that the market's going to be going a bit higher for now. So that's the most likely possibility. Thank you for listening, guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and peace out.